Okay. So through the Indigenous Peoples Movement platform on social media, we've been doing artist spotlights. We've had a few already, and what we're doing basically is using the platform to give a spotlight, obviously, to artists out there that are, either in the activism realm or doing things for a positive change in their communities, using music or whatever it is their art form is. And that's kind of what the basis of these artist spotlight is. And today we got Lyla June from where are you from exactly? So the people know.
Originally, I'm from Taos, New Mexico.
Taos, New Mexico. So a little bio about her. She's a poet, singer, songwriter, hip hop artist, human ecologist, public speaker, and community organizer of Diné, Cheyenne, and European lineages. Her dynamic multi-genre performance and speech style has invigorated and inspired audiences across the globe towards personal, collective, and ecological healing. Her message is focused on Indigenous rights, supporting youth, healing intercultural and historical trauma, and traditional land stewardship practices. So that's a little bio about her. And I remember the way that I met you was through the Black Hills Unity concert, I believe. And it was cool seeing you perform because there was some of the things that you talked about where, um, like through your music, it was almost like a conversation. It wasn't exactly like exactly just music. It was like you were using the music to kind of bridge like a message
Yeah.
that was almost like it could almost be like a speech at a rally or something, but it was like performed through the music, which I thought was really cool because it was like it's kind of like you pull people in with the music and then you feed them, you know what I mean, like the medicine basically that people need to hear about. So
Yeah, I think that's probably the best description of what I try to do that I've ever heard. It's like it is a musical performance, but it's really trying to share knowledge that my elders gave to me that had helped me in my life. So hopefully it would help others.
mhm. What were some of like I guess your inspirations musically?
Well, the first person that comes to mind, of course, is Lauren Hill. Well, at
Oh,
least, I don't know, of course, for everyone, but of course, for me,
yeah,
you know, she just had a way and still has a way of using music as a medium for healing and for enlightening people.
yeah,
Um, I grew up listening to a lot of classic rock.
yeah,
Uh, not by choice, but I have to say that probably influenced me a lot because it was just all around me growing up, like the
yeah,
Beatles, Led Zeppelin. So that definitely influenced me. Um, I guess other musical groups that really inspire me are like usually like spiritual musicians, like of all different genres, like Hindu, um, even like Jewish, or
yeah.
of course indigenous, different indigenous artists who have a spiritual message. So I don't know. I'm kind of weird like that. I just always liked music that had a connection to creator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you
So
think I mean as far as yourself, would you consider yourself like spiritual? And then do you think that's kind of why the music like that hits you the way it does? And then kind of like how you put it out as well?
yeah, I think all native, well, that's a maybe too broad of a statement, but most native people live a prayerful life because our ancestors taught us that that is it's like every breath is a prayer. You know, they say we
Yeah.
don't have religion, we have a way of life. And so when people came to the Dene, my mother's nation, you know, they thought we didn't have a religion. But
Yeah.
the truth was that our ceremony just never stopped. Everything was, life was a ceremony. And so, yeah, definitely spiritual.
Hmm.
But I grew up in ceremony, your people's ceremony, actually. That's why I'm always indebted to Lakota people because
Yeah.
y'all pretty much saved my life numerous times. Um, and Dene ceremony too. But you know, in college, I kind of lost it. I kind of went for like what all the European kids were doing, of like European American kids, of like partying and, you know, and I kind of forgot about the pipe. I forgot about the roots of like our spirituality. And then when I was 20, I had a total complete transformation. That's when I got sober. That's when I dedicated my life to creator, and I just got like super extra spiritual.
Yeah. Do you think like some of those experiences, like as you're like you said that you went through kind of like losing a little bit of it, do you think that kind of helped you appreciate it more the second that you got like kind of back into it?
Oh, definitely. I mean, there's some people that say a moment without creator is like 1,000 years, because when you feel disconnected from creator, I mean, that's the only real suffering you can feel. Now that I'm connected to creator, it's like someone could be torturing me or, you know, shooting me or whatever, but I would still have what I need. You know, and that's the
Yeah.
connection to creator. Like, and now, like, oh yeah, I mean, and getting lost the way I did, because I started doing drugs when I was 11
Hmm.
years old, which is common for a lot of Native people because of all the drugs that they put into our communities and
Yeah.
all the alcohol. So suffice it to say, I had a really hard childhood and teenager years. So when I found that spiritual path again, oh yeah, it was like a drink of water in the desert. It was like, you know, basically getting my life back.
Yeah.
It was everything.
Hmm. And I guess like what are some of the lanes that you've taken in life? Because obviously through music you get to see a lot, you get to go travel and do a lot. And I feel like for myself, that's something that I use to kind of like help even like the youth. Like whenever they like some of the younger guys that I know, they'll come up and they'll ask me questions about this and that. And I have a lot of experience through music that kind of helps them understand like what life is like as far as like chasing your dream or as far as like perfecting your craft in a sense. And then like how has that helped you kind of like branch out into other avenues in life or like in the community and whatnot? Like how has music kind of helped that?
Yeah. Well, honestly, music is not my main gig.
Yeah.
It's funny that I ended up becoming known as a musician. It's
Yeah.
definitely something I do, but I actually, I studied anthropology at Stanford, and I did anthropological studies to support sacred sites. Um, I then studied education for my master's degree, where I worked with communities to develop our own curriculum. And now I'm doing my PhD in Native American or Indigenous food systems
Yeah.
uh, and Indigenous habitat stewardship, and how those two things intersect. So I'm kind of like a nerd by like my day job is being a serious nerd.
Yeah.
Yeah. And beyond that, I ran for office last year for New Mexico State House of Representatives. So music is definitely a big part of my life, but it's like just one piece of the pie. There's a
Yeah.
lot of different things that I like to do, but music just sort of has melded in with all of that. Because even though there's a lot of different things that I do, um, all of it is part of the same overall project, which is to, I hope, uplift our people and help our people thrive and help the world understand us, because we've been so misrepresented for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
People think, some people still think we're primitive,
Yeah.
that we are savage, that we're stupid, that there wasn't that many of us here on the continent, or and part of PhD research and part of my music is like, no, we were freaking densely populating this continent, and
Yeah.
we have really organized societies, and what's left of our people is just 2%. They wiped out 98% of our people. So yeah, whatever people write about us now is going to be like a fragment of our original composition.
Yeah.
And so people don't understand that when the colonizers came here, they encountered incredibly beautiful, sophisticated, advanced societies. I mean, the Mayans, had better astronomy than Galileo. Um, our food systems were so brilliant. I mean, we created grasslands so that the buffalo actually came to us. through
Yeah.
patch burning. We would do patch burning on the Great Plains, and that would create these biodiverse mosaics, and the buffalo would come to us. So
Yeah.
for me, the music is just one extra way that I say, y'all got it all wrong.
Yeah.
Indigenous peoples have been and still are amazing.
Yeah.
And we're not a charity project. Like, y'all need to sit down and take notes from us. Like,
Yeah.
we have something to share in our ceremonies, our language, our culture, our dances. Everything is a device, is a part of our way of honoring and sustaining life, which is
Hmm.
way more effective than anything America has ever come up with.
Yeah.
Um, so anyways, to me, music has helped me help the community in the same way that all my other projects have, where it's helping me educate people to truly understand us.
Yeah. As far as education goes, like I think I've heard like a lot of mixed things about, like natives and their belief with education, but I also believe that education is very important, like as far as like um like being able to educate yourself on like you said, like food systems, or even understanding like the environment, or understanding how things work, that are related to things that, like you said, that the indigenous people have done in the past. It's like a lot of those things tie together, and it's like, I think that's one thing that I really support, is people getting educated, because um I don't think, it's hard for us to have a voice in a conversation when we can't speak in the white man's terms sometimes. That's why, like, growing up, I remember, like, especially on the res here, people always said I talked white, and I was kind of like, what does that mean? But I realized it was just because it was very proper, like using proper grammar, proper English, and it kind of made me feel a certain way, because it was like, what do you mean talking white? And I think that's where, like, it's almost like, instead of trying to beat somebody at their game, it's like join them at it, and then, like, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, it's hard for us to have a voice when we're not educated as others who are in those like higher positions, you know what I mean? And I think like that creates like knowledge is power, where it's like, if we want to say something, it's like we also have to have the vocabulary, and like being able to speak in the terms that other people do, to kind of like elevate our voice more or less. And because it's like a lot of us have the heart to speak up, but sometimes we don't have the words for it, and then it kind of gets lost, to where people will look at us funny and be like, like, I really, I think it's cool that you, like, that you went to college and did those things, because now you can get in front of, like you said, you even ran for office, like you can get in front of these crowds and speak, almost like not so much speak for the people, but be like a voice that represents like native people very well. Like how, I guess what I'm saying is, like, how important is education, like in your mind, for like native youth, or even just like indigenous people around the world?
Well, that's a really big question for me, because, well, first of all, let me just say, everything I learned at Stanford,
Mm-hmm.
I've been actively trying to unlearn, because it was so racist,
Yeah.
primitive, um, reductionist, incomplete, inaccurate in many cases. So while I did learn to talk like the white man, I never bought into what he was saying.
Yeah.
None of it made sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
I got really good at passing classes because I knew what they wanted, but I could see through it.
Yeah.
Like, I remember taking an economy class, or rather economics class at Stanford, and just the stuff they were saying was like, no wonder this world is screwed up. Because the foundational assumptions of
Yeah.
white economics is that there's not enough for everybody, and everyone will be acting out of selfish motives. Those
Yeah.
are the foundational assumptions of modern day economics.
Mm-hmm.
And our people believed the exact opposite. We believed that there's enough for everybody,
Yeah.
that we trained our youth to act out of selfless service. And so I went to University of New Mexico for my master's degree and studied with all indigenous professors.
Yeah.
And I learned more in one semester at UNM than my entire 4 years at Stanford, which is supposedly the greatest university in the country.
Yeah.
Is BS, excuse my language, but I mean, there are some saving graces at Stanford. There's some professors who manage to kind of sneak in there and do good stuff.
Yeah.
But overall, it is absolutely. But did I learn how to write? Oh, heck yeah. I've
Yeah.
written a bajillion research papers. I know how to write. I know how to speak, blah, blah, blah. So you're right. That was a good gift. The other reason that's a big question for me is because my grandfather also went to Stanford. He was full Diné. He was Ashihe clan, and his father was Maiteshkeshni. And he actually went to the boarding schools.
Yeah.
And he totally drank the Kool-Aid that Native Americans are stupid, white people are superior, and we need to be more like white people. So he went to Stanford. He then became the president of Navajo Community College, where it's now called Diné College, but at the time in the 70s was Navajo Community College. And he tried to turn the whole school into basically like a white school. Let's turn all these Navajos into white men. Is basically was what he was raised to do, in my opinion. Some of my family disagree. If so, I'm sorry. But I'm trying to do the opposite of what he did.
Yeah.
We actually just submitted a grant to start a university dedicated to Native knowledge. So I don't know if you'd be interested in this, but for example, what if you could go to a school where you got to learn your indigenous knowledge and use scientific research methods such as interviews or talking circles or measuring soil samples or measuring water samples to see if the water's clean, whatever you and your community need. And this university would support you through indigenous research methods to generate data for your communities. If it's saving languages, interviewing elders who are dying off, whatever it is, star knowledge, whatever the student wants to do, that's what we're working on right now. So that's a really big question you asked, but that is my general feeling on it, is that yes, it teaches us how to communicate with the white world, but to never, ever, ever sacrifice the ability to communicate with our elders in our languages. Because all those 4 years I spent at Stanford was 4 years I was not home learning my language. And so we have double duty as Indigenous peoples. We have to learn that language. We also need to make sure we don't sacrifice our own languages in the process. And secondly, while I did learn the white man's language, so to speak, I never ever drank the Kool-Aid that what they were talking about made any sense, because it doesn't. It's part of the problem, actually. The American university system is a part of the global problem.
Because I think it's really cool that you said that that you were able to kind of like in a sense you took what you could use and left the rest of it. And I think like I think that's like something that like the route that you took, I think that's how, in personally, this is just my opinion. I'm not saying like this is true or not, but I just feel like that's how it should be. I feel like a lot of our leaders should be, like you said, taking the good that you can get out of whatever and then going back and then learning like this, because now when you learn this, you can come back in their language and be like, no, that like, you know what I mean? Like you could defend this with that and they can't say nothing to it because it's like, what can they say? You know what I mean? It's like, I'm using the exact same thing you guys learned over here and defending it. And it's like, and there's really nothing they can do about it. And I think like, that's kind of like, that's why like with music, like for myself, I'm really like, before anything, I said I wanted to be a good writer. Like before I wanted to be like, do a music video or even a song, I wanted to get good at writing, because like, that's like the foundation of it. And I think that's like, knowledge is like a foundation of a lot of things. Cause it's like a lot of people have the heart to want to go, for instance, we run a boxing team here and our boys like are very good. And because like the way that me and my cousin coach is, we understand the fundamentals of a sport. like basketball. You got to be in shape. You got to be able to run up and down a court. And then after you get them in shape, then you can branch out into skills now. So you
Yeah.
have to be in shape to do the skills. The skills are necessary to go into the game. And then in the game, now you got defense and offense. So it's like there's all these little things that go into, you know what I mean, like a sport or anything that you're doing in life. And there needs to be like a solid foundation, which is being in shape, really, being conditioned to learn, being conditioned to physically withstand certain things. It's like you just need to be conditioned in, but like having a knowledge of it at first. And I think that's why like our people were so smart, was we understood what needed to be understood, and we listened. You know what I mean? There was no ego back then. Everybody was trying to survive, and they understood the only way to survive is taking care of each other. And I think that's something that we lack nowadays. And I think that's something that a lot of people are afraid to address, is that there is a big ego problem, I think, in indigenous communities now, that has been obviously passed down through colonization. But, it's like, like when you talk about, like, for instance, like I use music as an example all the time, but you look at Atlanta, their scene thrives because all the artists are supporting each other. Imagine how much we would be thriving as Native people if Native artists fully supported each other and shared all their stuff and constantly had this flow of like sharing each other's stuff. But now it's almost like people want to be the first to make it rather than helping each other get up there. Because if one of us makes it, we all make it, kind of thing. But
Yeah.
I think like that's what I think needs to get back, is going back to those ways of helping each other thrive and survive rather than trying to get it all for ourselves. Like you said, it's like the economics of the white man is, there's not enough for everybody. And you can see that now, especially like even in tribal governments, like there's a lot of, I need this. And it's like, well, there's plenty for the people, but it's like, no, there's not. But then you see like the ones in positions of power have the most stuff. And it's almost like, it's like, I don't know, it's kind of backwards from the way that it used to be till now. And I feel like it's people like yourself who have that knowledge of both sides of it can really help, like, target the youth and help them understand what it should be rather than, encouraging what it is right now,
Yeah. Yeah. I'm still decolonizing from my ego. I've always had gifts and skills and talents, but I definitely did take on some of the ego driven cultural characteristics of this this American culture.
Yeah.
And my friend and partner in crime, Tanea Winder, she started the Dream Warriors management company,
Mm-hmm.
which when Frank Wallen was sort of ascending in popularity, she was his manager, and she started this management company that was indigenous owned.
Yeah.
And then she started bringing on more musicians, and then I jumped on at a certain point. I think I was like the fifth musician. Now we have seven. And I love how she rolls because she teaches me so much. She's like, you know what? Maybe it's not about you, Lyla. Now she doesn't say this to me,
Yeah.
but I learn it through osmosis. And it's like, when we roll together as a collective, when we come as a team, and there's seven of us, and we go on stage at, we went to Spirit Lake recently. It was so fun.
Yeah.
All over the country to different high schools and middle schools and boarding schools, because there's a lot of thousands of Native youth still in these residential halls, living away from their families. So like modern day boarding school.
Yeah.
And we roll up together as a team. Oh man, it's so dope. And it's like, yeah, you're right. We do need to get back to that. We do need to try our best to get rid of these insecurities inside of us that drive our our desire to be like the in the spotlight, which is ironic because I'm on the spotlight right now.
Yeah.
But in the limelight, and just share that power and lift up other musicians when we can. So lately I've been doing that. Whenever people invite me to something, I say, okay, but can I bring my friend?
Yeah.
and I bring them on stage, or I bring them into the Zoom room with me.
Hmm. And I think when we talk about when you just mentioned about like the insecurities and stuff that a lot of people have, um, like there's these younger guys who they talk to me about like relationships, and the one thing that they always kind of stress is that they're not a simp, they call it, where they're not sprung over a female. And I kind of asked them, I was like, well, why do you think that's a bad thing to be more or less in love with someone? Why do you
Mm-hmm.
think that's a bad thing to show emotion? And they couldn't answer me because they didn't know why.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that a lot of times, I think some people who don't know that that's okay, like they were just never taught that. And
Yeah.
it's like a simple communication of like, it's okay to talk, it's okay to like feel, it's okay to be, I think that simple message needs to be heard. And I think that's why, like I said, people like yourself and even like the people that you work with, you guys can get on stage and you guys can say those things and people will listen. And I think that's the power of like native art, is like when you're good at an art form, whether it's beading or painting or something, like if somebody came in with this crazy beadwork piece and was like, I made this, people are gonna be like, wow. And they're already intrigued by you, because now then they're tuned into anything that you have to say because you wowed them with your art. Or if you come in singing or playing guitar and you do something that's like, whoa, then they're already tuned in with you. And I think that's like something that is very like powerful about the indigenous art forms, is like we can really influence people with the art. And I think that's something that I believe, like the messages like that you're even like you talking about right now about the school system, like I don't think a lot of people understand or even know, like what you said about that, about how almost in a sense whitewashed it is. And you see a lot of natives that are dying to go to these universities, and it's almost like they're going right into exactly what you said. And so I think it's cool that we can take these opportunities, like right even right now, these interviews, to kind of share that type of knowledge that might help somebody. And I guess, do you feel like have you ever felt the or can you see like the threat possibly of how influence can be good and bad? Like if you have the spotlight and realizing that you could say something that could make or break someone's day, like how do you feel about the power of influence? And I guess how do you try your best to be positive?
Yeah. Well, before I answer that, I just want to say how funny it is that some men call women females. It just sounds so funny to me. They're like,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, I was talking to this female," or like,
Yeah.
"Don't get sprung over a female." And it's just so funny because it's like, we're people. We're right here. Like, hey, we're not like some object in the distant, on the mountain somewhere. Like, oh, there's a, like, you spotted like a deer or something. There's a female. It's
Yeah.
like we're right here. We're in your community. We're your sisters. We're your daughters. We're your grandmother. Like, we're your friends.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that's just a side note. But I think that's my little plug to. And I know you were just saying that because that's what other people are saying.
Yeah.
But anyways, so influence. Man, that's another big question because it is a double-edged sword, especially in native communities where humility is the number one virtue.
Yeah.
So indigenous culture inherently doesn't really mesh with this whole celebrity culture because we never had that kind of celebrity stuff. if
Yeah.
you if you look at our music, it's always communal and collective. Like if
Yeah.
you go to Sundance or any ceremony, when we're singing all together at the same time. We have just like a simple beat, just the drum, like we're cool with that, and everyone's beating the drum together at the same time. There's no like one Britney Spears who is like on stage. It's a circle, and we're all contributing equally, and that has power
Yeah.
way more than Britney Spears could ever have. um and so I'm probably showing people how old I am by referencing Britney. But to me, like, that was like the big deal when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But anyways, so as a musician and as like a semi-famous figure in today's world, I definitely think that a lot of Native people, and rightly so, they look at me like, who the heck does she think she is? You know, like, it's not about you, you know,
Yeah.
it's about the people. So there's that piece of like, you know, community looking at you like, what are you doing? You know?
Yeah.
But if you do music in a good way and you do the music videos in a good way and your message is about lifting up the people, then that's, I think we need that.
Yeah.
But secondly, a lot of us, including myself, we aren't always ready for influence. We don't always have the wisdom of the elders. Like, for instance, I have a really massive social media following, at least for my standards, is, you know,
Yeah.
not nearly as big as Justin Bieber's or anything. But,
Yeah.
um, you know, if I say something stupid, which I do all the time, I don't mean to,
Yeah.
but you know, I'm only 31. I'm not very wise, you know, so I say
Yeah.
stupid stuff. And most of the stuff I say is pretty solid, you know, like 90% of it. But every now and then I make a mistake.
Yeah.
Um, and then the community can sometimes just rip you apart. Like, oh, why did you do that?
Yeah.
And so I think that's another thing is like, if you haven't made it yet as a musician, maybe that's a good thing because maybe you're not developed internally enough to have that platform. Like if I had made it 10 years ago, oh God, that would have been a train wreck because I was stupider then than I am now.
Yeah.
I would have said, oh, I mean, I was still doing drugs at the time. You know, who knows what could have happened.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, with influence, you also have the potential to, you know, broadcast your mistakes, basically.
Yeah.
So, but having said that, you know, if you do it in a good way, and if you do it from your heart, the best you can, and if you do it with the collective, that's why I love the Dream Warriors family that I'm a part of, because we roll together, or we try to. And when you're rolling together, it reminds you, hey, it's not about me, it's about
Yeah.
the message that we're carrying.
Hmm.
So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's a very complex question, and it's a very relevant question because everyone wants to be a YouTube star right now.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to be, you know, the next Britney Spears. Just kidding. No one knows who that is. But, you know, and so
Yeah.
how do we get Native youth to not fall for that thing, you know, like, oh, I want to be a star, you know, like, because if the message is good, the message should be the star.
Yeah.
And if we're a mouthpiece for it at a certain time, great.
Yeah.
But how do we help our kids not fall into that trap?
Yeah. That's a very good point because it's almost like you know what I mean? Like it's almost like you're using, I guess, like using the problem as the solution almost, because it's
Right.
like, because you
Yeah.
have like there's some people I know that, like, you know, they have like a huge, like you said, a huge following, but some of them are doing it in a sense of like they're saying, you know, they're making the music that is disrupting like the culture and the youth. So it's like they're getting popular with our own people doing the things that are disrupting them at the same time. So
Yeah.
it's almost like I don't, and I think this is where like a lot of, you know, I think that's where it kind of comes into play, where they got to understand their power, or they got to understand their influence, or somebody should be, you know, there should be somebody to talk to them about realizing like, hey, you have a big voice. And it's like, you know, like almost telling, not so much trying to tell them what to do, but making them aware that like anything you say can really influence this way or that way. Because like my uncle, a few years ago, one time he said, you know, he's like, people are watching you. Because this was when I started kind of getting better at rapping. He was like, people are watching you whether you like it or not. And he was like, you need to be careful what you say, what you do, because he said people are watching. And I was just like, at the time I was like, I don't want to, like, I was probably like 18 at the time, and I was like, I don't want to, like, I don't want that. He was
Yeah.
like, it don't matter. He's like, it don't matter if you want that or not. He's like, people are watching you. And I remember it took me a while to kind of comprehend that and actually accept that, because now, you know, I try to watch what I say for the most. I mean, I post a lot of like goofy stuff on Facebook, but at the same time, like there's a lot of positive that comes with it. And I believe like every time, you know, it's a lot of honesty, where it's like,
Yeah.
this is just my honesty. It's like, and I'll just like put a disclaimer on there, like, I don't think this is what it is. This is just like my opinion, my thoughts. And I always stress that to people, is like, you have a voice too, you know, like you can use your voice too. And I think like but going back to what I was getting at was, you know, it's like, in order to kind of change things, you have to kind of like go the same route. It's almost like playing the game to change the game, you know. Like, that's why I love J. Cole so much, because, you know, he's, you know, that was his big thing, was like, I don't really like doing these things, but if I can get a message out there for people that might change
Mhm.
their life for a positive reason, I'm going to play this game and get good at it and kind of like make it, and then deliver that message at the highest level. And I
Yeah.
believe like he's done that, because it was like, you know, like his song Love Yours, like you know, that song really holds a lot of value in my life, because it's like, you know, he, like he said, there's a lot more out there that a lot of people have, more expensive stuff, but it's like, you're never going to be happy until you love what you have now.
Mm.
And I
Mhm.
think that that's like a message that
Mhm.
doesn't just touch one area, like one group of people. That's just like, you know, human beings. That's why like people like John Trudell have always really like inspired me, because it's like, he didn't, I like, you like what you were saying about like the females thing, is like, it's like, you identify people as human beings first, and you
Mhm.
respect them as human beings. And I believe I've always tried my best to do that. That's why like I don't ever discriminate against nobody. It's like, even, you know, whether their gender or their sexual preference or anything, it's like, everybody's human. And it's like, there's certain things that you might like that I don't like. There's certain things that I like that you might not like. And it's like, I think that's why, like, through this brand, Tiwahe, it means family. And one thing I've always said is, everybody wants world peace, but not everybody's willing to accept everybody in the world. So it's like, how can we have that peace if
Mm.
you don't like this group of people over here, or if this group of people weirds you out? It's like, how are we supposed to accomplish that then? How are
Mm.
we supposed to, if we're not willing to accept human beings, like, how are we supposed to have that peace in the world?
Mm.
And I think like, you know, I think the power of influence, especially now through, you know, internet or social media, I think now I think, you know, it's more important than ever that people utilize that for a positive reason, because it's like you said, everybody wants to be famous. And I think one thing I guess I could ask you is, how does it feel to have that many people watching you? How does it feel to have that many people, like, to be cautious of what it is that you post? Or, you know, like you said, you feel like you post stupid stuff sometimes, or say stupid things. Like, do you ever feel like, well, I don't know, like wrong or guilty for some of those things? Or do you just kind of accept that that's just a part of it? Like, how do you deal with having a big following watching like everything you say?
Yeah, thank you. And then, unfortunately, I have to go soon, so this will probably be the last question. We'll
Yeah.
wind down after that. But these are awesome questions. Well, the truth is, I haven't perfected that practice of being a leader
Yeah.
yet. And but what I do know is, I know what I'm striving for.
Yeah.
And I don't always hit the target, but what I'm going for is to be a hollow bone,
Yeah.
which is what our ancestors prayed for, right? And what that means is, may I be hollowed out of myself, such that creator can flow through, the ancestors can flow through, the grandmothers and the grandfathers can flow through for the people
Yeah.
in the best way possible.
Hmm.
Um, and whatever I do, I try to keep that prayer at the forefront.
Yeah.
And when I do that, what comes out is usually what needs to come out, whatever it is.
Hmm.
Um, it's when I get into that judgmental state, like you said, whether I'm hating on Trump voters or I'm hating on this
Yeah.
or that, things that are really easy for us to get upset about and
Yeah.
judgmental about. That's when I'm not being a hollow bone.
Yeah.
I'm being whatever I'm being at the time, but it's really about gratifying my own judgment of
Yeah.
others. And that's when I start saying things that I wish I didn't say, or
Hmm.
things that were mean spirited, or things that were not really constructive or helping, or
Hmm.
things that honestly like just didn't need to be said. Like the world would have been totally fine if I just never hated on that group, you know.
Hmm.
Um, so, but you know, I think that the bigger lesson I'm learning these days is to develop a sense of self.
Yeah.
And I never knew what that word meant, a sense of self, but
Hmm.
it means creating a knowledge of self. I know who I am, I know what I stand for,
Yeah.
such that other people's opinions about it don't matter.
Hmm.
Now, to get to that point requires a lot of introspection, a lot of looking at my childhood, looking at my father, looking at my mother. What did they teach me that was right? And what did they teach me that was wrong?
Yeah.
Because they learned it from their parents. Um, eh, why do I carry so much pain? Why do I have these insecurities? To really turn yourself inside out and comb through your life with a fine tooth comb to say, what do I stand for? What
Hmm.
parts of my expression are truly what needs to be said? And what parts of my expression are the pain inside of me trying to say something?
Yeah.
Because those things don't need to speak right now. Those things are my wounded self trying to get attention or get love or get whatever.
Yeah.
So for me, to have so many eyes on me, which again they're not that many, but maybe more than usual. Um, I'm trying to develop a sense of self such that it really doesn't matter if it's
Yeah.
one person listening or 1 million people listening, because what I'm saying is what I know needs to be said. And always, 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 what needs to be said is love.
Yeah.
So once I can hone in on that love and deliver it, I don't care. Or at least
Yeah.
I'm trying to get to the point where I don't care um, what the comments say or what. My job isn't to be liked. You know,
Yeah.
my job is to say what I mean and to
Hmm.
learn what is it that I mean so that I can say it.
Yeah.
Um, if people don't like it, that's okay. I'm trying to learn to not cater to people's opinions and everything they're coming with.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that's the best I can answer that question. It's a good question.
Yeah. No, I think you're doing a great job at it. Because I think and to kind of wrap it up, I think what people um like when I look at, for instance, like a LeBron James, right? I always like Kobe Bryant because he said what he meant, whether you liked it or not. And I always feel like LeBron says things that he feels he needs to say to uphold this like image that he has of like being a good person. And I think people like yourself, like I respect people like you because, like you said, you don't you feel like that's what needs to be said, and it's like a very human like reaction. Like you're not reading off a teleprompter, you're just saying what it is that you're feeling. And I think that's very
I'm not there. Yeah,
respectable.
I definitely pull a LeBron every now and then where I'm like, oh, let me do this so people will think, but that's where I'm trying to get is where you're saying. But thank you.
Yeah.
I think
And
most times I'm able to be authentic.
yeah, and I think I think a message to anybody watching. I think we all have to continue to understand that no matter how high we view somebody or what type of pedestal we put somebody on, we have to remember that we're all human. We all have times where we're feeling this way or feeling that way, and something comes out that may not be likable or agreeable all the time. But I think that's where we have to understand that even like our medicine people, or even like our people in our communities that we hold highly, it's not an excuse, it's not justifiable,
Yeah.
but we have to understand like we're human, you know what I mean? And I think that yeah. So but to wrap it up, is there anything that you would like people to know about you, where to follow you, where they could find your music or anything that you've been a part of. Just anything that you want to share, I guess, before we wrap it up.
Well, why don't we do a song real quick just to end it?
Yeah.
It's a quick song.
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
Okay. Okay, if I can remember it, but this one's called Boarding Schools.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. When I was a little girl in the schools, yeah, they had me fooled. They said your native culture, it ain't got nothing for you. And if you want success, get a gold star, be the best. So I went to the best school I could find, and I left my culture behind. When my grandmother was a little girl in the boarding schools, yeah, they had her fooled. They said that her brown skin was original sin. If she wanted to be saved, then in Jesus' name she prayed. So she went to college on a train. She read her Bible every day. So when I have my little girl, she'll have everything she needs. She'll have a choice of who to be. She can speak her native language and she can still love her neighbor. Love the color of her skin. See the beauty that lies within. Because we remember who we are. Our supremacy was a lie from the start. You can't cut this down. There's no stopping us now. Head held high, feet on the ground. Elder songs. We hear the sound. We hear the sound. We hear the sound. I hear the sound. We hear the sound. We hear the sound. We hear the sound. We hear the sound. So you can't cut this down. There's no stopping us now. Head held high, feet on the ground. Elder songs. We hear the sound. Just end it with that little song.
That sounds good.
Prayer for our people and for our cultures and languages to go on and on and on and on. So thank you, Stuart. It's awesome to connect with you.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. Once again, can you tell everybody where they can follow you on Instagram or anything like that, any of your socials?
Yeah, so it's LYLAJUNE, just on everything. Instagram, well, and Facebook. I'm like, don't have TikTok yet. But those are the two main ones. And then YouTube, of course, I have all my music videos. Spotify's Lyla June. I'm putting out some new music this year, so just keep an eye out. There's going to be a few albums coming out. And that's mostly it. Don't want to give you my LinkedIn. That would be boring. But yeah, and I just really, I'm so honored to see you grow and sharpen as an arrow for our people, Stuart. It's really cool that we've been hanging out almost 8 years or something, and it's just cool to see you growing and developing and creating what you're doing, and just keep it up. I so believe in you. I believe in your community. I believe in the ancestors you carry, and just keep doing what you're doing.
Well, we appreciate it. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Have a good day.
Yep, you too.
Mm-hmm.